Braden with a $10 super chat. Do you think Rockstar are taking the P? Yes, they can do anything they want, but just because they can doesn't mean they should. They're causing a lot of ruckus in the whole game industry, not just with GTA. Well, so there's a lot of drama around Rockstar right now as well, not just because of the GTA 6 delay. Obviously, that generates a lot of discourse and lots comes up with that. But there's also been allegations of union busting. There's been allegations of misconduct and mistreatment and all sorts of stuff. If you're not familiar with the union busting thing, basically Rockstar announced that they were laying off like 40 people roughly, Rockstar North, I believe specifically. And they said they were being fired for gross misconduct. And later they clarified that that meant that they were sharing confidential information through Discord and other online venues. Which could be sharing leaks, could be sharing information about like release windows. It could just be like sharing information that they signed an NDA not to share or talk about, like legal information or accounting information, like any number of things. Those people who were laid off then claimed that they were actually discussing forming a union, and that's why Rockstar fired them, because they didn't want them forming a union, so they fired them before they could. Now, to play devil's advocate, if you're gonna be like, if you are actually leaking like confidential information, you're probably not gonna admit to that, you know, like you're probably not gonna lead with that and be like, yep, so they laid me off and they said it's because I was leaking stuff, and I was. You're probably not saying that because you'll never get hired in the industry again. So bear that in mind. Like, they would never admit to doing what they're being accused of doing if they were in fact doing it. They claim that they were discussing union stuff, and that's why they think they were being fired. And it's possible that both are true, that they were sharing confidential information through Discord, perhaps discussing business through Discord throughout or without official communication channels. For example, like I know at some companies, any company discourse has to occur within company communication channels. If you're discussing something related to business, it has to be through the company Slack, company email, or like phone calls within the company, Zoom calls, stuff like that. You cannot like discuss company information through your personal text messages, for example. And it's possible that by negotiating and discussing forming a union for the company, but through a private Discord channel, that could be twisted and interpreted as discussing company terms and company information on a private channel, which is breaking NDAs. So that's also possible that like both are sort of true. Either way, it's messy. But there was also this posted and dug up by Ben on X or Twitter. Basically, it's a post from a Rockstar employee. It's been validated by one of the admins on the forum, the GTA forums, verifying that this is actually an employee at Rockstar. And what they said was such and so. I will read some of it for you, okay? Rockstar employee of many years here. He verified his information, also a member of the union. I've been reading a lot of the discussion on here and elsewhere about the firing of more than 34 of my colleagues last week, 31 in the UK and 3 in Canada, and have seen a lot of disinformation and lies that are really concerning, particularly concerning how so many folk are willing to believe the company's excuses. Because also bear in mind, the other piece of this is that if a company is firing somebody because they're discussing union stuff or forming a union, that's called union busting, which is like big no-no, like hardcore illegal. You can't do that. Like that, you don't do that. So the company would never say, yeah, we fired them because they were discussing union stuff. Like they would never ever say that. So also bear that in mind. If the employees who were fired were discussing confidential information or leaking stuff, they would never say that. And the company would also never say if they were doing what they were also accused of. So all of this is kind of he said, she said at this point. But continuing on. Last week, my colleagues who were in the studio were each individually messaged by HR for a short friendly meeting under the friendly guise of, hey, are you free for a quick chat? Upon attending this meeting, they were handed an envelope with a short letter stating that their employment had been terminated for gross misconduct regarding posts made in Discord. They failed to provide any evidence when asked, nor was any stated in the letter, and did not divulge any other information or reasoning, and no other reason. They refused their right to union representation in the disciplinary meeting, which was against UK employment law, and were frog marched out of the studio, with the meeting lasting less than 5 minutes, which is pretty common in like big companies. If you're laid off or if you're fired, you're immediately gone because they don't want you going back to your computer and like taking company info and stuff like that. We had that when I worked in real estate. There was somebody that was booted out before I got there, I heard all the stories about him. But when he was booted out, it was because like they had started to find that he was taking company information and like saving it to his own personal computer because they could track all of the downloads and stuff. So he's downloading the company's server information and like database of clients and stuff, and it's like you don't do that unless you're planning to like leave or sell it to somebody. It's very sketchy. But anyway, continuing on, for colleagues who were not in the studio that day, they received a phone call from HR that lasted 2 minutes, telling them that they were fired and they would be receiving the same letter as above. I am aware of one employee who had a panic attack at this moment, and HR hung up on them during this panic attack, not caring at all about their well-being. These colleagues of mine were hard workers who have spent many years at Rockstar in critical roles, with colleagues who have been at Rockstar for more than 18 years, and none of them have ever had any disciplinary action in that time. They are not necessarily replaced and will certainly affect us in making our project deadlines. These are very senior artists, animators, QR testers, designers, programmers, and producers, including leads, all super talented people who were proud of their work over multiple Rockstar titles, and all they wanted was the best for Rockstar and their fellow colleagues. Some of these members were off sick, recovering from surgery, or on paternity leave, fired without pay, losing their careers and putting them into hardship in the lead up to Christmas, and even potentially losing their visas to work in the UK. Let me make this clear. I never saw any discussion / leaking of Rockstar projects in the union Discord. The only ever discussion was around unionization efforts and working conditions at Rockstar. The Discord was not public. It was a private Discord group that only contained Rockstar employees and the IWGB union officials. So this is something that this is a good clarification. They're saying that the Discord specifically that they were having these discussions in was specifically for the union, and it included union officials in that Discord group. But it was not public. It wasn't like they were in the Luke Stevens community Discord sharing information or discussing anything. They were in the union Discord discussing stuff. This was union busting and nothing else. Everyone fired was a union member. They were also predominantly from those who were on the union organizing committees of each UK studio. Just 1 week before, the union had reached 200 members, taking us over the 10% threshold required to seek recognition and begin engaging in collective bargaining, allowing us to negotiate directly with management on the key issues that affect us, such as worsening crunch, inadequate pay, and inflexible working arrangements. They have fired over 34 of us now. There were over 250 of us in that union employee Discord group. There is the fear that they will get away with this. They'll have nothing stopping them from doing this again and again and again. Basically, I interpret that as their fear is that they're going to just fire people to keep it below the 10% threshold so that they don't have to recognize the union. Because if you get fired, you're no longer part of the company. Therefore, you're not part of the union representing the company. So if they fire those union members, they don't have to engage with them in like collective bargaining or discussions. Those of us who are lucky to remain and now work in fear, fearful when talking to each other at the tea prep, fearful, that's the most British thing I've ever heard, the tea prep, fearful that we're in line and are easily got rid of, too scared to go outside the studio and talk or even acknowledge our colleagues outside protesting in fear of reprisals. Morale at the studio is at rock bottom when we should be excited about what's to come over the next year, and we are now totally deflated and our trust and confidence in others is totally shot, which is the truly heartbreaking part. As for us in the union, all of our ambition was to make Rockstar a happier, fairer, safer, and more equitable place. That's all. What has happened clearly shows that we care more about the well-being of our colleagues at Rockstar than the company does. The union remains unbound and is fighting to win the reinstatement of every dismissed member of staff at Rockstar through legal means and campaigning. This fight is critical. If Rockstar can get away with this, they will keep treating their workers with disdain, disrespect, and subject them to continued illegal treatment. And then they offer a link to their fundraiser for this movement trying to collect money for fighting Rockstar on this. Now, as with all this stuff, unfortunately, this type of thing is all too common in the industry. You guys know I have brought up with other layoffs that have hit the industry that there's often a pattern where the more aggressive layoffs tend to be focused and concentrated on studios or teams that are unionized as opposed to the ones that are not, because when you form a union, you can collectively bargain, negotiate higher pay, eliminate crunch at your studio, which is another way of saying that like it's going to be more expensive to produce games there because they can't squeeze 80 hours a week out of you. They can only get 40 out of you. So that's going to drive up development costs because it'll take longer. Better healthcare, which also increases costs. All of it just comes down to money, right? A unionized studio is a more expensive studio. And so you'll notice whenever there's layoffs, a lot of the unionized studios tend to be looked at more closely for potential layoffs than a lot of other ones. And I don't think that that's a coincidence. The thing is, union busting is a serious accusation in the UK, certainly in the US as well. It is not something you're allowed to do as a company, and you can face major ramifications if you are found to be engaging in it. So, any sort of extraordinary claim does require extraordinary evidence or sufficient evidence for the claim. At this point, these are just claims. I want to be clear. I've heard many stories from Rockstar developers where it sounds like a not necessarily super great place to work long term. Tons of crunch for like months or even years at a time. You do make some amazing games, but it's not like a cushy job. It's pretty tough. They strive for perfection, and that usually is at the expense of the teams that need to deliver it. So I believe that crunch is really bad, and I would believe that it's probably not the most loving, caring environment. It can be pretty cutthroat there, I'm sure. But claims, again, of union busting are pretty severe. And that's what they're trying to raise money for, is to be able to take this to court and like argue, and they can do discovery, so they can ask for all of these emails between managers to see if they can get a manager to say why these people were fired. What was the specific gross misconduct through Discord? What was the problem? Was it messages within this union Discord group, or was it something else? Typically though, when a multi-billion-dollar company, which I'm sure Rockstar by themselves would be worth over $1 billion, when you're at this point, typically they get their ducks in a row before doing something. So I'm guessing there's no like clear paper trail or anything. I'm sure it probably is like, oh, we found something where they did technically break a rule. You're not allowed to discuss company information like game anything in the Discord group, but you were in the Discord group, even though it wasn't public and it was a union one, you're still not allowed to discuss development. You're not allowed to discuss this stuff. You guys did, so you're fired. It probably is something like that, where they have a loophole or they have a fine print that they got them on. To me, it seems mighty convenient that they had just reached the threshold to go and start engaging in collective bargaining and be officially recognized. And right when they reach that threshold, allegedly, is when the wave of layoffs hits all at once. Could be a coincidence. Maybe not. To me, that doesn't seem like a coincidence. Again, allegedly, based on what this person's saying. But how this somebody in chat, how does this affect GTA 6? Unironically, that's where I think most people will land on this, is they're like, okay, yeah, that's terrible and all, but how does this affect GTA 6? Realistically, I think it's just Rockstar and Take-Two Interactive trying to get their ducks in a row and avoid skyrocketing expenses before they kickstart what is, for them, hopefully, their biggest product ever. They're going to launch GTA 6, and then they're going to launch GTA Online 2 or whatever they call it. And that's going to, hopefully for them, generate billions upon billions of dollars. So they need all of their ducks in a row. They can't have any sort of really like increased instability or anything, which a lot of union discussions can introduce. And I would say, if the person in this post is accurately relaying what's going on, it sounds like it worked. Like, it sounds like exactly what they would hope to achieve has been achieved, which is now people who are in the studio or in the unions are scared to form a union. They're scared to talk about union stuff. They're scared to engage with each other outside of work. They don't want to discuss anything about work anywhere other than in the studio. And that's kind of like, I think, the exact point of this. Like, that's what they wanted. Even if it's true that like they were sharing confidential information, they still achieved what they wanted, like they still got what they wanted. So people are now being very, very reserved and quiet about it. So It's very interesting. I'm sure there's going to be more reporting on it. I'm sure there's some investigative journalists who are digging into it and trying to find out if there's more to it. But like I said, with all things, you need evidence for claims, and this is a severe, significant claim that they're union busting allegedly, and that is a big deal. I mean, it's a big claim. So if it is true, I hope that there is some evidence to back it up beyond just claims on a GTA forum, but time will tell. To me, it seems plausible, or even maybe possible, even plausible, but there needs to be a little bit more evidence before I would like jump on it fully. Personally, let's see. Is it true they're working on Red Dead 2 remaster, Luke? I've heard people say that and say that they are. I don't have any like special knowledge that they are, frankly. So I don't know. But I don't have any secret special knowledge on it. Oh yeah, but Strauss Zelnick says he really truly means it now when he says that they are looking at releasing in November. It's funny because he almost said word for word the exact same thing last time when they set the May date. He's like, we're very confident, we really believe in that date, and he's saying like the exact same thing this time. It's just funny.